Welcome along. In this first learning outcome, we'll get to grips with the language of macroeconomics, the big ideas, and key terms you'll lean on for the rest of the unit. Macroeconomics is the study of the economy as a whole, rather than one shop or one market, which is the job of microeconomics. Think of it as stepping back to look at the whole national picture, total output, total spending, the general level of prices, and how many people are in work. When the news reports that the UK economy grew by 0.5% last quarter, or that inflation has hit 6%, that's macroeconomics in action. Governments and the Bank of England use it to make decisions that touch everyone's wages, jobs, and cost of living. Let's build up some vocabulary. Macroeconomic objectives are the big goals a government chases, things like growth, low inflation, and high employment. The economic cycle is that familiar rhythm of good years and bad years, booms followed by downturns. And GDP, gross domestic product, is the headline measure of an economy's size, the total value of everything a country produces in a year. When you hear that the UK economy is worth well over £2 trillion, that figure is GDP. A few more terms worth knowing. Demand-side policy is action aimed at how much is being spent right now. For example, when the Bank of England cuts interest rates to get people spending again. Supply-side policy is different. It's about lifting the economy's ability to produce through things like training or better roads and railways, and aggregate demand is simply total planned spending, made up of consumption, investment, government spending, and net exports. Add those four together, and you have the total demand in the economy. Here's the difference in plain terms. Demand-side policy works on how much money is flowing through the economy today, so cutting taxes or interest rates puts more in people's pockets and lifts spending fairly quickly. Supply-side policy plays a longer game, improving skills, transport, and technology so firms can produce more at lower cost. When the government funds a new wave of apprenticeships, that's supply side, and it might take years to show up in the figures. Most governments reach for both at once. The circular flow of income is a simple model of how money moves around the economy. Households own the factors of production, their labor above all, and supply them to firms, who pay wages, rent, interest, and profit in return. Households then spend that income buying the goods and services those same firms make. Picture your own pay packet arriving and then flowing straight back out to the supermarket, the landlord, and the coffee shop, and you've got the idea. In this simple version, what flows out comes right back, so the economy stays the same size. This diagram adds a bit more realism. The inner loop shows households supplying factors and firms supplying goods, while the outer loop shows the money, firms paying incomes and households paying for goods. But money doesn't just circle forever. Some is injected in through investment, government spending and exports, and some leaks out through savings, taxation, and imports. When a family saves part of their wages or buys an imported car, money leaks out. When the government builds a hospital, money is injected back in. The economy grows when those injections outweigh the leakages. Let's name those flows properly. Withdrawals, or leakages, are money leaving the flow, and there are three of them: savings, taxation, and spending on imports. Injections are money entering the flow, again three: investment, government spending, and exports. The economy sits in balance when the two sides match, when investment plus government spending plus exports equals savings, plus taxation, plus imports. For instance, a surge in online shopping from overseas sellers raises imports, quietly pulling money out of the domestic flow. Now watch what happens when those two sides don't match. If injections are greater than withdrawals, more money is coming in than leaking out. Firms see demand rising, so they produce more and hire more staff, and national income grows. That's an expansion. If withdrawals beat injections, the opposite happens. Demand falls, output and jobs are cut, and the economy contracts. You saw the second case during the pandemic, when nervous households cut their spending and saved instead, and activity shrank sharply. Let's make that concrete. Say the government commits £2 billion to a new railway line. That's a fresh injection of government spending. The construction firms receive the money and pay it out as wages to workers and orders to suppliers. Those workers now have more income, which they spend in shops, cafes, and on services right across the country. Rising demand encourages other firms to produce more and take on staff, so a single injection ripples outward and lifts the whole level of activity. That knock-on effect is exactly what we look at shortly. The economy never grows in a smooth, straight line. It moves through a repeating cycle. At the top is the boom, or peak, with fast growth and high employment, though prices tend to climb too. Then comes recession, when output falls, and the technical definition is 2 quarters in a row of shrinking GDP. The low point is the slump, or trough, with high unemployment and weak demand before recovery sets in and output starts rising again. The UK lived through this in 2008, when the financial crisis tipped a long boom into a deep recession. This chart shows actual output wobbling up and down around a long-run trend line. That steady average rate the economy tends to grow at over time. When the line rises above trend, the economy is booming and may start to overheat, with shortages and rising prices. When it dips below trend, there's spare capacity, idle machines, and people out of work. Policymakers try to smooth those swings, cooling an overheating economy and supporting a weak one, so the ride is a little less bumpy for everyone. It helps to picture each stage by its features. In a boom, output is high and unemployment low, but you get rising inflation and shortages. Think of firms struggling to fill vacancies during a hiring frenzy. In recession, output falls and unemployment climbs as confidence drains and some businesses close their doors. The slump is the bottom, weak demand and very little investment, while recovery brings output back up, jobs returning and confidence slowly rebuilding. Knowing the signs of each stage helps you read where the economy sits at any given moment. The multiplier explains something that surprises people: why an initial burst of spending ends up raising national income by even more than the amount injected. The reason is simple. When you receive extra income, you spend part of it, and that becomes someone else's income, who spends part again. On and on it goes. The share of extra income people spend is the marginal propensity to consume, and the share that leaks away to saving, tax, and imports is the marginal propensity to withdraw. The multiplier is 1 divided by 1 minus that spending fraction, so the more of each pound that gets respent, the bigger the final effect. Let's put numbers on it. Suppose the government injects £100 million and households spend 80% of any extra income, so the marginal propensity to consume is 0.8. The multiplier is 1 divided by 1 minus 0.8, which is 1 over 0.2, giving 5. So the total rise in income is 100 million times 5, That's £500 million. The first round of firms and workers get the 100 million and respend 80 of it. The next round respends 64, then 51, and so on. All those rounds adding up to 500 million from the original 100. This chart shows those spending rounds as a series of shrinking bars. Each round is smaller than the last because a little leaks out every time to savings, tax, and imports. Add all the bars together and they come to 5 times the original injection, just as the formula promised. And here's the sting in the tail. The multiplier runs in reverse too. When a big employer closes and those wages disappear, the lost spending ripples outward and pulls national income down by more than the initial loss. So, what actually drives the level of activity? It comes down to the 4 parts of aggregate demand. Consumer spending is the biggest, roughly 2/3 of UK demand. Everything households buy, from the weekly groceries to a summer holiday. Then there's business investment, firms buying machinery, buildings and technology, government spending on public services, and net exports, what we sell abroad minus what we buy in. A rise in any one of these lifts total demand, which is why a strong Christmas on the high street can noticeably boost the whole economy. Several things sway how much of that spending actually happens. Confidence is huge. When households and firms feel optimistic, they spend and invest more freely. Rising real wages give people more to spend, while high unemployment does the reverse, draining both incomes and confidence. Conditions abroad matter too. A booming world economy buys more of our exports, and a global slowdown buys less. The key thing to remember is that fear can matter as much as money. Worried people save rather than spend, even when their wages haven't actually changed. Let's see how that plays out in a downturn. Imagine news spreads of possible job losses, and suddenly households and firms turn cautious. Families put off big purchases like a new car or a holiday and save a little more, just in case. Firms delay buying new equipment until they can see where demand is heading. Both of those pull spending out of the economy, and through the multiplier, that fall in demand causes an even larger fall in national income. It's a reminder that a change in mood alone can tip an economy downward. Let's draw the threads together. The circular flow shows income moving between households and firms, and injections and withdrawals explain why that flow expands or shrinks over time. The economic cycle captures the repeating rhythm of booms and recessions, and the multiplier shows why any change in spending has a larger final effect than you'd first expect. Together, these ideas are the vocabulary you'll be reaching for constantly when we turn to policy in the next learning outcome. To recap what we've covered, macroeconomics looks at the whole economy, its output, prices, employment, and spending. The circular flow of income tracks money between households and firms, with injections of investment, government spending, and exports set against withdrawals of savings, tax, and imports. The economy grows when injections win and shrinks when withdrawals do, moving through boom, recession, slump, and recovery around a long-run trend. And the multiplier explains why an injection produces a larger total rise in income than the amount first put in. That brings learning outcome 1 to a close. We've built the core vocabulary of macroeconomics, the circular flow, injections and withdrawals, the economic cycle, and the multiplier, the tools you'll use to analyze real policy next. If you'd like to go deeper, the reading list points you to standard texts like Sloman and Begg, and to genuinely useful live sources, the ONS for the latest GDP and inflation figures, and the Bank of England for interest rate decisions. The listed case studies, the bank's response to the recent inflation surge and the 2008 recession, are well worth exploring as you prepare your assignment. Take your time with these before moving on.